game.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people talking on Twitter, and people that aren't even Bengals fans, obviously talking about the refs, which the refs did play a little part in this game. They were terrible, but the real thing is that the Bengals just didn't play good from the start. It looked like.
What are you more upset about? Joe Burrow's 2 interceptions?
I'm not as upset about that. I'm just more upset about how they couldn't run the ball, and they just. I mean, the offensive line looked terrible, which I guess is expected, but couldn't protect Joe, and then Joe necessarily wasn't on his A game. Patrick Mahomes is a lot better than I thought he would be, honestly. And they just won the game. They did everything to win the game that the Bengals didn't. I mean, the Bengals had the ball, the 35 with 50 seconds left and could have gone down on 1.
I was just surprised how the Bengals played in the first half, because they usually come out firing in the first half, and then they might trickle down in the second half.
Yeah, did not even score a touchdown in the first half against that very young secondary for the Chiefs. Couldn't even get really anything going. I mean, the first half got to the red zone twice, got inside the 15 twice.
I mean, it didn't really matter. It didn't matter that much. Like, they started pretty slow. So did the Chiefs. I mean, 6-13 at halftime.
You gotta get touchdowns when you get down in the red zone. You can't kick field goals in the first half, especially, and you can't get. I know they did it last year. They were down 21-3, came back and won, but you don't want to get down. And then of course, when the refs aren't really calling it consistently both ways, it can't be in the refs' hands. You just gotta come out. But I thought they would come out, to try to back up all the stuff they were saying all week. And of course, the mayor is the dumbest person on the planet, or whoever his advisor is.
Who do you think is the biggest player to blame from the Bengals?
I don't know.
Is it Joe? I mean, it wasn't one interception tipped.
The second interception was basically a punt, but the first one was really bad. The first one was miscommunication. I guess he thought T. Higgins was gonna go run a post, but he instead ran it out. So threw it right to the guy, easy pick. I mean, the defense really did show up. They bailed out the Bengals a lot, because that interception, of course, they got the ball at the 45, and the Chiefs had the ball within, on the Bengals side of the field, 6 times, and only scored 23 points. That's not that bad.
I don't know if the OC for the Bengals called a bad game. He called some pretty good plays on 3rd and long, and what did they convert a 4th and 6 late?
Yeah, there's double coverage on Jamar, but
yeah,
I know what they were trying to do. They kept calling halfback screens to P. Ryan and Mixon, and 4 of them got thrown in the dirt. The last one ended up being intentional grounding because Burrow threw it not close to him. I just didn't understand. I knew what they were trying to do because the offensive line couldn't block. You think that the Chiefs' D-line is going to be eager to get to the quarterback. You try to catch him off guard with the screen, but it just wasn't there. It wasn't there the first 2 times. Why do you keep trying it? You need to attack more of the downfield passing game with the weapons you have.
The biggest takeaway from the first half is how healthy Mahomes looked. Even if I don't know how many rushing yards he had, but he looked perfectly fine in the first half, even if the first half for both teams were pretty sluggish. So that kind of I'm sure the players. But
they should have. I mean, they didn't. The Bengals didn't bring pressure enough.
That's probably the most surprising thing is
they decided to play back and let him pass, which exactly would play into.
If I wasn't watching Hendrickson, if I wasn't saying Hendrickson needs to get a play, his name was not called. It felt like all night. I don't think he.
No, their offense line's really good, and
yeah,
Hendrickson struggled. I mean, they really should have brought 5 or 6. I know Mahomes is good against the blitz, but you gotta take a chance. You gotta get him under pressure. I mean, they caught a huge break
It's crazy that he only had 8 rushing yards, Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean
he only scrambled 3 times.
Kansas City couldn't run the ball either, but Mahomes just made like countless third downs where he would just make a play where he's about to get hit. He would always find the guy. I mean, he played like almost a perfect game for the most part, except that little one he was throwing the screen and just completely dropped the ball. But Burrow was just a little off and had some miscommunication with Higgins.
I think like the most upsetting part is like even up until like the last couple possessions towards the fourth quarter, it felt like the Bengals were making more plays the whole game. Like the Bengals were making 3rd and longs. They were chucking it up to T. Higgins, and they were making the big plays, but like they weren't scoring. Or just a couple drives. Which, I mean, the first interception was bad. I do remember that now. But I don't know. Patrick Mahomes with one leg, he played really smart. Like he didn't have that many incompletions, and those were like just short armed. Him not having a leg, like he can't throw off his back leg. He played really smart as like a half-hurt player.
I mean, he had a 67 QBR, which is not that great, but I mean, it's still. Burrow had a 50, so it was good enough to win the game. And I don't know if the Chiefs are going to beat the Eagles. I think the Eagles are a better team, but
they could.
They definitely could. They have the best quarterback in the league, and that wasn't a debate. Like people were debating about that before the game.
To get healthy.
Yeah, I mean, people were debating before the game, whether Burrow was better than Mahomes and stuff, but that's like so dumb. Mahomes is so far above every other quarterback in the league. The only reason the Bengals have been beating the Chiefs is because the rest of their team has been good. And Burrow's also really good, but he's not Patrick Mahomes, and this game definitely showed that.
It's gonna be a weird like next 5 or 6 years because I feel like with like right now the Bengals, Bills, Chiefs, it's gonna be like whoever wins in the divisional and they play, it's going to be like back and forth. Like this year, the Bengals beat the Bills in the divisional, but then they lost. It's going to be back and forth every time. I don't know. It's going to be, like, as a fan, really good to watch. It's going to be back and forth. But I do think Joe Burrow did put himself over Josh Allen these playoffs. That's a positive. I mean, it's just Josh Allen hasn't done that much just yet. We can say they should have won it last year, but they didn't.
I think I would be surprised if in the next 4 or 5 years anyone else but the Bengals, Chiefs, and Bills make the Super Bowl. As
a Raider fan, I do see that as well. I don't see we will need a lot, especially like an elite quarterback to even. I do think the Raiders are that's a different video, but I mean we're not at the level of these 3 quarterbacks. Even Herbert and Lawrence are they're a step below Burrow and Allen. I still think.
I think Herbert needs some better coaching. I
he
don't
got
know
it
why.
today.
That's awful.
That's awful. As a Raider fan too, that's pretty good for the Chargers.
I still don't like Staley. I still don't think he's a good head guy. So I don't know about the Chargers.
I mean, I still hope they're an embarrassment, but I doubt it. He got way better. I think Gilmore was a head coach. I don't know why he's not a head coach, but maybe he's just ring chasing. But I don't know. This playoffs, there's a lot of good things to take from the Bengals because I mean. Joe Burrow's right now, he's 2. He's the AFC quarterback number 2. Not even worried about the NFC. But do you think how bad of a look was it? Jermaine Pratt? Was he complaining on Twitter? Or not on Twitter, but
yeah, they got
this
him.
Is my last game. Why are you hitting the quarterback? That's the last thing the Bengals need to do.
I mean, most Bengal fans are kind of they know that Pratt is probably going to sign with someone else for more money in the offseason. And I guess he was just I understand he was really, he really wanted to win this year, I assume, because he might sign with a team that's not as good for more money.
Same with Bates. Did Bates say something?
Bates was.
Bates, he was confident that the Bengals would give him the money, but the Bengals are probably not going to give him the money. Is that what he said in his presser?
Yeah, he said
he knows he deserves it.
He wants to play here, but he knows that he just can't leave $10 million on the table. So basically saying that he wants more guaranteed money than he knows that the Bengals are going to offer him, which is fair. I mean, if you're in that position, you get your money.
I don't think the Bengals are hurt by that at all. I mean,
he definitely wasn't.
They could spend their money way better. If
he wasn't what they expected him to be this year.
I'm not going to say Jesse Bates is replaceable because it's really hard to replace a pretty good safety, but in this case, I mean, I do think that they can replace him pretty well, especially if they draft in the late first round, or even sign somebody a little bit cheaper. Like the Bengals for next year, like if we ask the question like what's next for the Bengals, they'll be just fine, if not better. Like it's these three teams are just gonna flip flop. Like 1 year is gonna be, maybe not even the Bills. Maybe these two teams just keep flip flopping. Like one team beats the other 1 year, and then they win the Super Bowl. Or the Bengals will be just fine. They will be even better next year. Especially like I'm looking at Joe Mixon and stuff. Like they will spend their money a little bit better when some of these players. I think they'll keep Tyler Boyd. I don't see why. Especially like they lost. Like if they had won a Super Bowl, maybe a couple of these players would have thought about leaving, but not now. I think Tyler Boyd.
They got basically everyone. I mean, the only person like on offense that that like is going to be an unrestricted free agent is this offseason is Hurst. So I mean, everyone will be back next year. They'll have at least, if Higgins ends up signed somewhere else, they'll have at least one more final go.
They will be just fine because they were 3 points away from a Super Bowl with the. I mean, I know the line was the hurt, but that's another place they can get so much better in the offseason is drafting. Or, I mean, they had a bunch of third string linemen in the AFC Championship game. They just about won. I mean, against a really good. That was another surprise about the AFC Championship game is Clark and Chris Jones. Like they were stellar. Like they were. I mean, I know who they're going up against, but I think they'll be a good game for the
Frank Clark
Eagles.
almost has the most sacks in postseason history.
Yeah, I mean
that's insane. Like you don't really think of when you think of that, you don't think of Frank Clark, and he's almost there. And
they better keep that D line.
Chris Jones didn't get his first. That was his first postseason sack he ever got in that game.
Yeah, they better keep that defensive line because those cornerbacks, they're not going to last. There's a bunch of rookies.
I would think that their young secondary will probably get a little better. I'm assuming that's what Kansas City's hoping, but Kansas City has to pay Patrick Mahomes $450 million. I mean, that's the one guy they're worried about. And I mean, Joe will get his money this offseason. Obviously, the Bengals are gonna do whatever, give him whatever that he needs. And I think next year will probably be the Bengals' best chance to win a Super Bowl, considering just who all will have to pay after next season. But
also another good thing to look. I mean, it's not a good way to look at it, but the Chiefs, they were going to beat the Bengals eventually. They were going to beat. I mean, now it's over. Like now they don't have to worry about holding a streak or some 3-0 Joe Burrow. They got rid of it. Now they can. Like it's going to be a flip flop every year, which is most Bengal fans probably don't realize that it's going to be back and forth. It's going to be like a checkerboard. Like I really feel like there's no back-to-back teams in the AFC in like the next 5 or 6 years. It's going to be all randomized, but just with these handful of teams, 3. But
with all the 4 games that they've played the past 2 years, I mean, all of them could have gone either way. Like it could easily be 4-0 Kansas City or 4-0 Bengals. Like that's how close the games were. So just to see like in the past 3 games, the Bengals made the plays at the end of the game to win it. They went down and got the points at the end of the AFC Championship last year, and they got the interception in overtime. And this year, in the AFC Championship, the Chiefs just did exactly that. I mean, they got the 2 picks, and they just played the best defense. They played the best defense I've seen them play in the playoffs, and since they won the Super Bowl. I mean, the last 3 years, they've not looked too good on defense in the playoffs, but in this game, they just looked like they had a great game plan, and they made Burrow was uncomfortable the whole game.
The way to look at it for like Bengals fans is just now the Chiefs are even. Now, like their Bengals got them last year, the Chiefs got them this year. So there's not really. I mean, there's a lot of bad to look at it just because like how those players acted, a couple players. But if a lot of these players are still under contract next year, they'll be just fine. Especially, I mean, Kansas City, that's another scary thing. They probably will get better next year too. I mean, I don't know who they got to pay, but I'm sure they'll keep all their core players and just add people. Especially their receivers. I know a lot of their receivers, they don't get paid anything. Like Pacheco, McKinnon, I don't know what Juju. I'm sure Juju still gets like a Pittsburgh contract or whatever his contract is, but they'll be right there too. Do you think the Bengals add anybody in the offseason?
If they add
or
anyone,
do they lose?
It'll be like kind of like an underrated linebacker that probably won't make as much. to make up for Pratt leaving more than likely, because they'll probably sign Logan Wilson to a bigger deal. And then that's about it. I mean, they'll re-sign Hayden Hurst probably, unless he asks for more, but I think he's pretty fine where he is. And
I don't know why, but it just feels like it's so hard for the Bengals to get like not even a good offensive line, just like a reliable.
They had the pieces this year, and they were playing so good towards the end of the year, and then just 3 of them get hurt. Like, it's just...
I know,
it sucks that they're healthy all year, and then, I mean, the last game of the season, Kappa gets hurt, and then La'el Collins goes out for the year against the Buccaneers. It's just, like, terrible luck. I feel like if they had him in this game, it definitely would have been different, because you wouldn't be playing, Carmen, and, I mean, 74, the right guard, Sharpling, I think is his name. He was, I mean, it was obvious, like, they tried guarding Chris Jones with him one-on-one, like, in the first couple drives, and it was just the worst thing I've ever seen. They couldn't do it anymore. They had to double team.
You mentioned, like, a couple of times, like, you were comparing it to, like, the Bills in the 90s where they can never win a Super Bowl or even get over the hump. I really don't think that's the case at all with this Bengals team, just because, I mean, they have, like, the top quarterback in the league. They have the top receiver in the league. They'll get over the hump. Maybe it might take 6 years when the Chiefs are done. They're like, I mean, years matter a lot in the NFL. I mean, they're 4 years younger than the Chiefs is how I look at it. So, like, Joe Burrow's AFC debut was 4 years younger than Patrick Mahomes. So that's like another positive to look at.
I think one of the worst things about it for me was just knowing that I can't watch them play until September. But the one positive I kept thinking about after the game, you're feeling sad, you just lost a chance to go to the Super Bowl by a field goal. The one thing I just thought about is, like, I'm just glad that we have who we have playing quarterback. Because I feel like the Bengals, I say for the next at least, like, 8 to 10 years, they're going to at least have a chance.
There's only 5 teams in the NFL, I can say that. Like, 4 of them are in the AFC.
I don't think the Bengals will ever be, like, a bad team with Joe Burrow. Like, they had a couple good years with Carson Palmer, and then the team just fell off. Like, the front office just, like, quit on Carson Palmer, and then he quit too. But I just don't see that happening again, because I feel like Joe is a really, really likable guy, and I feel like a lot of people want to play with him. And, I mean, he's also really good.
Even, like, when we talk about how, like, the Bengals might lose T. Higgins in, like, the far future, even if they do lose T. Higgins, they'll be just fine. I mean, because, like, you just look at the past Super Bowls, all you need is one wide receiver, honestly. I mean, look at the Eagles. I mean, Devontae could be a wide receiver 1, but it's got to be a pair. It's got to be A.J. Brown and Jalen. It's got to be Patrick Mahomes and Travis.
That's the difference with the other 3 teams that were in the conference championship games is that they all had, like, top 5 offensive lines.
Same with the Rams last year. They had Cooper Kupp, and I know Odell was hurt.
They just need to get better on the offensive line. Like, their defensive line got way better in the offseason. DJ Reader is a better player than he was last year, which is saying a lot.
As long as they have Joe and Jamar, they'll be one of those 5 teams that always has a chance to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're always going to be in the playoffs.
The Super Bowl.
And I mean, unless Lamar leaves the Ravens, it'll always be a fight if he can stay healthy to win the division with them. I don't see the Browns with Deshaun pushing the Bengals or the Ravens. I don't see the Steelers pushing the Bengals or the Ravens anytime soon with Kenny Pickett. So I think it's the Bengals and the Ravens right now for the division. And then, I mean, the way I'm looking at it, I see the Bengals pushing for the 1 seed next year. They lost some games this year that they should not have lost.
I can see that next year. Like, they be the 1 seed, and then the Chiefs, Bills, and then whoever wins that Chiefs-Bills game, like the Bengals might take.
Like, the last 2 years have showed how important that 1 seed is. I mean, the Chiefs have played 5 straight home AFC championship games, and they've won 3 of them. And they have a chance to win their 2nd Super Bowl in 4 years.
It does matter a lot, especially just like with these teams.
I mean, the 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years is just, I mean, they're cooking with a dynasty soon if they win another one. I mean, they could be. And, I mean, it seems like the Bengals and the Bills are the only teams that can stop them, but the Bills haven't beat them in the playoffs yet. So it's hard to see the Kansas City Chiefs not winning.
I do believe like all the, not hate, but like I do think the Bills are like a step down from these two teams. I do, because like you see all those pictures with Stephon Diggs and where I was just looking. I mean, they haven't done anything. They haven't. I mean, they haven't conquered the Chiefs like the Bengals did once. The Bills haven't yet, that's why. That's another off-season thing that could be like scary for the AFC is like if the Bills like either blow it up or spend a lot of money on a bunch of these free agents like we're reading about, which is they did it with Von Miller and he got hurt. Who knows what the Bengals game would have looked like if they had Von, but as of right now the Bills are just a step below the Bengals.
Yeah, I just like who's fourth? Would it be the
Next year will probably be the Chargers. They were fourth this year, which they should have beat the Jags, but it's another team.
The Jags could improve in the offseason too.
Yeah, it's just a difference of like which I feel like the Chargers will spend a lot of money like they did last offseason. I mean, Bosa is, even off the field, his antics, but he's still one of the best in the league, and they still got Derwin James, they still got Asante Samuel.
That's
another team that's gonna like in a couple of years break through in the playoffs. I do think, which I hope not, but in the AFC, that's probably all I see is those four teams right now. The Jaguars are creeping, but as of right now, even the Ravens, Steelers, the Raiders, they're far away from these four teams. No matter how much money like the Raiders, Chargers spend in the offseason.
Don't you think like the next 3 or 4 years that the only teams that are gonna beat, the only people that can beat these teams are each other in the AFC?
Yeah, it's gonna be flip flop every time.
Yeah,
So far, it might be.
The Bengals need to finish better. They need to get the 2 or the 1 seed to have, because 2 years in a row they've won their division and had to go play at the 1 seed and at the 2 seed. It's really hard. You're not gonna be able to do that every year and make it out of the AFC. You're just not. You need home field advantage at least once, and I feel like next year is probably the best chance for the Bengals to do that, considering what division they play. They play the AFC South, the worst division. I'm not saying they should get the 1 seed. The Chiefs are better, but they have a really good chance.
As of right now, it's just going to be a flip flop of these 3 teams. The offseason it'll be a long offseason, especially how different the Ravens will look, how different the Raiders will look, how different the Chargers will look. The Jaguars could have had a lot of people who, the Browns, the Browns were like they won 6-7 games this year. They won 6? 7? It's another AFC team to worry about.
They could be like a little like dark horse wild card team. I feel like they could come out of nowhere and like finish.
And then a bunch of the AFC. The Titans, Colts. They're not there in the playoffs just yet, but like if they get a quarterback, maybe who knows. But as of right now, like just literally the season ending for the Bengals last night, it's just these 3 teams. I don't know if I see the Chargers or Jags making like a step next year. They'll have to add a little bit more pieces, but